What's up? What's up? Hopefully everything's working okay. Hey, people out there, please let me know what is happening. If you can hear me, if you can't hear me, hopefully things are going okay. I've got Sep Rock Beats on the beat. This is from his Sinking City Records double album, double vinyl LP. Hold on. Let me get this camera going. This is track 10. Track 10. That's right. Alright, hold on. One of these days, gonna have a some kind of editor or something. I don't know. Something like that. Alright, hold on. That's gonna end. Let me find this camera. Swear this thing out. Here we go. We are back. Shop studio. Nothing in the background. Sorry, no cool cabriolet or something like that. But we are back, and we are, I don't know, talking about crazy stuff. There are lots of crazy things happening in the world. Tell your friends that we're talking about crazy stuff. Show them the picture of all the police officers, like graduating police school. And then let's talk about the report detailing white supremacists infiltrating law enforcement. Hold on. Let me see if pardon me. Let's see, I forgot to paste the or at least hold on. I'm going to put a link in the description. I referenced this FBI report about white supremacist infiltration of law enforcement in the, well, it's sort of the pivot point of this discussion, really. Let me put it in. Alright. So, there's a link in the description if you want to do some research later. You can read the report. A lot of it's redacted, so there's a lot missing anyway. But basically talks about white supremacists trying to infiltrate law enforcement organizations to learn tactics, to bring back to militia groups, etc. But also to exert influence by, wielding the power of the state. Whoa. So, this thing has some sensitivity to it. Hold on a second. Pardon me, my asthma's kicking in. I'm getting a little wheeze. I don't want to pick up too much, sorry. And unfortunately, no Medicare for all, so I still gotta wait till I can afford my asthma stuff. But it's coming. Time is coming. Alright, but anyway, let's talk about it. White supremacists, infiltration of law enforcement, what's going on? How does that impact people? This is a report from 2006. It was suppressed by Congress, so you could say, well, James, what do you expect? There's nothing that could have been done. Or what do you expect anything to have been done? It was suppressed by Congress. Since 06, so nobody really got to know about it or whatever. So obviously nobody really did anything about it either. So let me see if I can show you at least a little picture of what's going on. Let's see here. Maybe not. Showing the wrong thing. Why is it doing this? I seriously need someone to be willing to try to be like an editor or something. Like not even a producer, live producer for the show, because I'm telling you, it's a little bit tricky. But hold on, maybe see if I can get. Oh man, it keeps showing the wrong. I don't have time to do this. I had it set up last time. It never wants to do what I want it to do. Anyway. Alright. white supremacists are maybe I can move this. Hold on. I can make this work. Anyway, they're sort of taking over law enforcement. So they've been doing it since 2006. No one's been doing anything about it. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the issue, I would imagine, right? But it also it points to this notion that things that happen in the government, even that the government will tell us, can be, if it's suppressed, then there's a systemic issue that's going on. There's a oh man, hold on a second. I'm trying to get get it so you guys can see this report. Hold on. This might be the only way. I don't know. I don't feel like anything's working. So let's see if this works. Here we go. So, sort of in a weird spot there, but there's a here. You guys can see this this report about the white supremacist infiltration, law enforcement, FBI, blah blah blah. Right. So if this has been going on 14 years, what impact could that have? I guess that's my main question. One of the other questions I posit in the description is, which one is a white supremacist? How do you tell? So here we have this report detailing white supremacist infiltration of law enforcement. So who's who? Which is who? Which one is the white supremacist? And that to me is a very important question, So people that deny police violence, I guess that's the main question for them, is how does this report impact white people in general, white citizens versus non-white citizens? Can we actually entrust that the police are actually doing anything about it? So what should they be doing? How do you even know how do you verify white supremacist tendencies or bias, right? So that becomes, and now some people say, oh, well, now you're like one of those liberal crazy people or whatever. But I think these are valid questions. I mean, the FBI is telling us white supremacists are doing this. We all sort of knew that. If we go back to the history of the creation of the police, we hope that there is a cleansing, really, of all of that, I think, right? We hope that has been a cleansing of the racism, and there's more of this egalitarian quest for justice, right? That we hope and pray, but we don't know if that's really happening, right? I don't think it's really happening. Nobody's, it's become a meme now. But think about it, nobody's rioting about firefighters screwing things up or whatever, right? So there's a specific thing happening with police, and so there's a report. There's no report saying white supremacists are infiltrating the fire department. Do you think there might be a coincidence about those types of? I mean, there's not FBI report detailing white supremacist infiltration of like social workers. You know what I mean? So, is there a coincidence? I don't know. You tell me. I don't know, right? Let's talk about it. That's what we're talking about. So, which one's which? How do you know? Let's talk. I'm trying to share this on Facebook and see. You guys share it on your end. Let's see. You got any people that want to talk? There's probably some thin blue liners. Let's talk. I want to talk to police. I would especially love to talk to someone in the police department. Please, I would love if you know someone in or around law enforcement. Please, let's talk about it. How? Let's literally talk about how do we know which one is the white supremacist? If the FBI is saying for the last 14 years no one's done anything about this FBI report saying white supremacists are infiltrating law enforcement, how do we know who is and should? I mean, what do we do? What do we do about it? What is your suggestion officially as a police officer, especially white police officers? How do we tell? I mean, out of all the people who would know how to detect white supremacy, I would imagine it's white people. Maybe? Nah, maybe not. Maybe they're immune, maybe not immune, but maybe they're numb to some things, or they normalize some things because of upbringing. If they're around white supremacists, they don't know that they themselves are. Possibly, I don't know. Some people are more aware than others of different things. Some people harbor some kind of weird guilt more than others. I don't know. It gets touchy. I think people get too sensitive about too many things. All right, let's see. All right, so I dumped some Facebook shares. Let's see if anyone jumps in with some opinions. What do you guys think? Put it in live chat. You can also Skype in. I think my Skype is signed in. Yes, I believe so. So you can Skype and say something. You don't have to turn on your video. You can simply talk, and you don't have to be on. Oh, maybe I'm not signed in. But anyway, so until the Skype comes back on, which I might or might not, I can't remember. Oh, dang it. If I can remember the password. But anyway, until then, I would just simply get on the live chat and tell us there. So what do you think about this? So it looks like somebody's on live. Let's see what's going on. Actually, Skype is down. You guys are just going to have to chat on the live chat. I always read the live chat, so get up on it and be part of the show and give your thoughts. Because, look, we're seeing uprisings in the street regarding police brutality. We're seeing police brutality brought down upon protesters protesting police brutality with, so it's this weird vortex cycle going on. We also have factions broken up in the United States that are now arming themselves. We have Trump supporters going to riots specifically to quote-unquote put down and or quote-unquote assist the police in their duties, which another meme situation in of itself. I mean, it's like if you look at policing as a professional endeavor, which I would imagine it sort of is a professional endeavor, right? Yeah, maybe. If I was doing that, considering it a professional endeavor, other professional endeavors would not want lay people joining in just because they have the tools of the tools of what's it called, of the trade or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Can you imagine if someone was playing basketball? I mean, like, you got pro basketball players and someone from the team jumps in and is like, hey, I can sub in, I can help out. And it's like, even if they're losing by a large margin, it's like, dude, get the fuck out of here. What? Right? Or would you enter a surgery theater in a doctor's, a surgeon, would you, anyway, place they're conducting surgery in the theater or whatever, operating theater. And would you just jump in and, like, scrub in? Like, you can't just go and assist people, like professional people. Like, I don't know. I don't think you can, but I guess people get deputized. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's see who jumps on. So we got one person out of the billions of folks on the earth. Very, very unique out of all the folks in the world. But got a couple people, maybe the shares have gone out. So what are your thoughts? That's a sort of a launch point to a bigger issue, really, we have the idea that, okay, so we've got white supremacist infiltration. Not all white people are white supremacists. Obviously, I believe that's obvious. Some people might not believe that's obvious, but I believe that's obvious. That the majority of white people are not racist, I believe. But I don't, I don't know. There's like big swaths of chunks of country and chunks of the city that are racist. I mean, they harbor some level of racism, or I would say prejudice. When prejudice, transitions into decision making that affects lives, does that become racism? I mean, there's people get technical in particular about the words and their definition. I respect that, so I want to clarify. Because, for instance, it's like, I'm not racist, I just don't hire black people, or you don't give black people the same level of opportunity you would give white people. Okay, based on their skin color. Great. Okay, you're not racist. I would assume that's racism right there. So I think that there's probably a lot of that out there. They don't outwardly say, prejudice things. They don't stand up for the ability to say racist things and stuff, but they just won't hire black people, and they just won't recommend that you hire, unless they're a good one, whatever that means to them in their context of whatever, if you impress them the right way, but otherwise they have like a special predisposition to not like a certain race, oh, he's an Indian, just moving into the neighborhood, I'm not hiring an Indian. That kind of shit. So, I mean, that's out there, when it extends to police force, what does that mean to the society? What does that mean to brothers and sisters in our country, right? So, it's something to ask. I would love to talk to someone on the police force. How do you know? What do you do to combat that? Is there a silent culture of complicity? I think there is. I think there are levels of power that dictate a solidarity that is based on some level of racial line, I think, is involved. You tell me I'm wrong, please. I think a lot of it too comes to there might be a class issue too. Who pays for me? Like a lot of times I've heard cops say, well, let's face it, who really pays our salary? It ain't the poor's. Right, and then it's like, okay, so we see where your solidarity lies, right? I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. Superfan Chris is on. What is up, Superfan Chris? Okay. Kat's not my name. What is up, Kate? How are you? Sorry, I realized back in the day I was calling, just to say things quickly, calling you Kat, and it is not your name. So Kat's not my name. What is up? Welcome back to the show. Superfan Chris says, I don't think there are many white supremacists. However, there are many who have preconceived prejudice against individuals based on their skin color, religious beliefs, and sexual orientation. But it's not just white people. It's every ethnic group. Okay. Every ethnic group. The prejudices come from ignorance and propaganda that's been fed to them by various sources. Individuals who are the ones the individuals who are the ones to be aware of are the silent. Yeah, well, that's the see. Therein is the catch. How do you identify the silent? How do you hear the silence? Right? How do you find the sounds of silence? And I think there is no real. I'm not expecting a real answer to my question. So right. So it's a rhetorical question. How do you pick out the white supremacists? Really, you can't. But I think there's a question that that exists that I think should be said out loud that hasn't been said out loud. You know what I mean? Very often, at least not in public discourse, especially within the blue line crowd. So now you got an FBI report. Now you have to pick which wing of the government you're gonna trust, you know, and then you're like, oh, the FBI got hijacked by Hillary, so this is fake news. I'm like, well, it's back in '06, so what? I mean, is that maybe? I guess are we doing that? I don't know, right? Superfan Chris says ones who fan flames and sit back and hide in the shadows, not the guy who flies his flag proudly around the city. Beware the judge who just flat out hates everyone. Yeah, beware. I mean, that's the thing, is that we have these folks with these existing biases, etc., that exist, and of course we should be aware of all of those things. We should well, I guess my question to you is what should we do? How do you identify these people? Right? I believe you. Yes, you should watch out for them. Yeah, you should be careful of the judge, but how do you identify this judge? Right? How do you know who in the midst of you and me and all that we see is the white supremacist, right? Or the prejudiced person. One of the concerns, excuse me while I drink this, I am really thirsty. It's been a crazy time. Missed the shows last couple weeks. Those who follow regularly, sorry about that. It's just been crazy. It's been a crazy time. So tonight, no different. Sorry, I had to take a sip. Okay. What are we saying? White supremacists. Yeah, I mean, how do you I guess the white supremacists or blue line folk would say, well, you know, gangbangers, a lot of gangbangers are black. How do I know this black person's not a gangbanger? And the question is, well, let me back up. How do you 100% define how one looks, number one? And number two, it's not a profession, and it's not a wing of the government. You know what I mean? You're just supposed to give citizens of the United States the benefit of the doubt and treat them like citizens of the United States. You know, that they have constitutional rights the same as any other person in the United States. You know what I mean? I would imagine. Why not? But that's I don't know. Anyway, but so I guess there could be a different standard, and there should be a different standard, and that's okay. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be a white supremacist with the power to kill citizens that you may deem inferior to you, like that. That's just weird. You shouldn't have those predispositions. How do you call for that? Like, how do you test for that? I don't know. That's the big question. And if someone can come up with answers, it will turn from rhetorical to actual, like, potential problem solve. You know what I mean? That could be turned into actual action. But right now, it's just a rhetorical question. All right. So Superfan Chris says it's pretty hard to identify, but folks will always tell on themselves and who they are as an individual. We must be conscious enough to see that. But we aren't to assume either. It's a tricky thing, right? We can't just assume it, right? Because again, we don't want to be on the flip side of punishing people because of our biases or predispositions, one way or another, or things like that. Hold on, let me turn this thing down. So we don't want to be just as bad, you know. So, all right. So let's see what else. What else we got? Okay, so yeah, Superfan Chris. So what else? What else do you guys think? Bring some. If you know someone that's on the police force, if you know folks that are like blue line folks, what do they think about this idea the white supremacists are infiltrating law enforcement? Do they believe that's true? Do they think FBI would create a fake report? And really the real question becomes, if you're not white, like if you're non-white, and white supremacists are infiltrating law enforcement and have been unmitigated to anyone's knowledge, for at least 14 years, and knowing the history of the United States, where at its default, in its beginning stages, racism was at the core of legislation and culture. And then only over time did it progress more out of it in recent times, right? So a common question I like to pose is, do you believe that rules and laws change hearts and minds, right? Would the Second Amendment people who believe in the Second Amendment, who die for the Second Amendment, if the Second Amendment was repealed and taken out of the Constitution and everyone else agreed to it, would they succumb and believe, oh, I don't really need the Second Amendment? No, that's cool. We are all right with that. Go ahead. Take it away. Here's my guns. Of course they would. Of course they would not. So when someone says no more segregation, or someone says integration, if someone says anything of that nature, that we are, equal, that we're all together, those cultural changes don't necessarily change the hearts and minds of everybody, right? It does for some people and it works for some. It changes the consciousness in the whole and the net effect. But in the other side of, in the credits and debits, you're seeing the existence. You can't negate the actual existence. You can't just look at the net effect. You can't look at the general popular culture showing one way or another. There's massive virtue signaling about non-race biased stuff, blah, 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 in popular media culture. But does that reflect the actual, existence of the subculture that's out there somewhere, that has prejudice, that isn't being represented, right? And they, of course, feel all weird. Why they existed this whole time, because rules and laws don't change hearts and minds, and just because you look at the net effect, you're not looking at the whole ledger. They still exist, and that's the thing, and that's the thing, and that's the sting, because then they have kids, and then they got grandkids, and then they tell them to be racist, or they got nieces and nephews, and like, you gotta stay away from them Mexicans, or you gotta stay away from them blacks, or you gotta stay away from them damn Asians, unless you need a math quiz help or something like that, right? See, and then boom, oh, look at that, James dropping stereotypical racist Asian jokes. Well, you know what? I can do that half the time, per my genetics. So, anyway, what do you guys think? Got a good group of folks watching tonight. Chime in, let me know what you think. Do you have any folks that would be itching to jump into this discussion? What do they think about the anti-police sentiment that's out there? What's going on with the pro-police sentiment out there? There's like not really a rational, well, maybe there is a couple folks out there that's sort of taking this in a rational direction. What does that even mean, right? I think folks that are saying, completely pull the plug, there's very few people who are saying completely pull the plug on police. Some uber ultra libertarians are doing such things. Why? Because they feel like, well, I can have a private police force or a private security force protecting me, so I don't need such things as a inefficient government force. And some anarchists are like, yeah, we don't need a police force, we can judge ourselves and figure ourselves out, blah blah, which the anarchists and libertarians really should be getting together. But because of some weird culture war, libertarians are aligned with pro-war Republicans who also do some awkward government spending stuff. And the anarchists, a lot of them are aligned with, some of them are libertarian, but then some of them are, they might be anarcho-communists, you know what I mean? It's like, and you might be like, well, how does that work? Because isn't communism when the government rules everything? How can you be an anarchist and want the government to rule everything. Well, because communism, per Marxist communism, requires with this utopian state, right? Not state, but utopian state of being is what I mean, not like sovereign state. But this utopian society would be a classless, stateless, so you can't have like a government controlled thing. If it's stateless, that means there's no government, right? So what is it? It's anarchy. Marxist communism is anarchy. What is it? It's like you are like living on the earth and you're just using resources and living on the earth. And maybe you don't even need money. It's like Little House on the Prairie kind of thing. And you just go live out, and then you just, I don't know, if you want a cell phone or something, you get like, if you need to go find some way, figure out some where to pedal. You know what I mean? And then people don't really have a means to make that work. Well, there's also structural things that are in place to prevent that from happening. Otherwise, the capitalists wouldn't be able to take advantage of your desperation to, and to pay you as little as they possibly can to keep you where you are. Right? It's all interconnected. Really, which one's the white supremacist is one question, but the other is which one is simply a tool for capital. Because really, at the end of the day, if we distilled this down to class relations, which really at the core of things, even the racism ties back to class relations, because you can trick a majority of the class, if they're racist, you can trick them into caring more about race than their own class consciousness and their own well-being, etc. You just get them riled up, So now you have a big surge of this sort of white grievance politics out there, like, white people this or that. Of course, every other race has to be like quiet, because, oh God, we can't hear about what they're doing. But then the white grievance comes in, and it's like precedent. So that's going on. And among all of that, what's happening in the police force? These folks have guns. They're pulling guns on people, and putting themselves in dangerous situations where they just decide that they're in danger, and then they just like what? If you're really going to find yourself in danger, why don't you prepare? Like, for instance, if you're going to apprehend somebody, why don't you, from a distance, point your gun at them and tell them to, hey, I have a gun pointed at you, put your hands up, or go do something where I can apprehend you safely. No, they walk up on people, and then they try to arrest them, and they're like, whoa, don't arrest me, what are you doing? And they're like, whoa, resisting arrest, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what's going on? This is stupid. And that's happening. So if you're a racist, you're probably going to treat a black person a little bit different than a white person. And if racists are infiltrating law enforcement per the FBI, that could be a problem happening across the United States, right? So that becomes a scary, scary issue. So what do you guys think is going to happen? And then also, with the social turmoil that's going on, what will happen within the police force? How unified is the police force as far as politics go? Have the white supremacists infiltrated enough, and are they now in high enough positions to where they can exert an influence such that it is strong enough to sway the police departments one way or another? I think we see that happening, right? And why did I bring up the hearts and minds of Americans and all that stuff? Well, the reason is, remember, why? Because of the default state of the United States being that it was formed based on race. Some people say, why do things have to always be about race? Why does it always have to be about race? I don't know, you tell me. The country was founded that way. I mean, it's not like I found it that way. or founded it that way. I was birthed out and found myself in a world that way, that was founded that way, and still has memories and shadows from that time, some ripples that still echo. I don't know how many metaphors I can still keep, pulling out of this. But anyway, just these things that linger from the past still exist, and I think we can't completely negate their existence. Otherwise, it becomes dangerous, and I think that's part of what we see. So, again, it would be great if you guys know someone on the police force, if you know someone who is a Blue Line supporter, get them to come on to the show. Unfortunately, I forgot my Skype password. I don't know why it logged me out of Skype. I don't want to sit here and redo my freaking password and all that shit. It's tedious, and I got a show to run. So, what do you guys think? Superfan Chris has dumped some stuff down. Cats, not my name. Superfan Kate, what is happening? What do you think about this? I know that that I'm sure you've got some folks that you know that are in the police force or have been around them. What do you think? What do you think they would have to say? And I don't want people to think, because of my critical nature of police force, which I'm critical of all government stuff because they work for us with our money, even though, I don't pay a ton, but they're supposed to be accountable to the public. I'm part of the public. We all are part of the public. We should all be talking about this stuff. I heard a father's retired cop. And Superfan Kate is on the line of being Blue Line supporter. Right. So Blue Line supporters, where do you stand on that? Right? And of course, not everyone in the police force are racist, but if that's happening, how would they, if they were chief or something, how would they mitigate this or assuage the public or assure the public that, hey, this kind of behavior or this kind of thing is not tolerated? And do you believe it's true or not true that there is still remnants of a past of America's history that still lingers in there, and that maybe it should be somehow identified and pulled out? Maybe it's not true that it really affects the when the boots hit the ground. However, if it does exist, we should find out how it I guess manifests, I suppose. All right, Superfan Kate says, I feel like it's hard though. There's so much corruption and very poor training. Yes. So this goes to, there's so many layers to the onion, and a lot of times we end up bubbling things down, and people accuse me of overthinking things because we're talking about cops, and then I'm going to start talking about class issues, right? The fact that some police are made up of folks that feel like they have no other maybe choice but to go towards one way or another, go towards law enforcement, just like the military. Some folks wanted to go to the military, maybe they didn't get a chance, or whatever the reason, and or they feel that they just feel a need to go to the military, or whatever. I don't know. Some people just have this intrinsic need or feeling to be part of it. Now, some people might be on a mission per the FBI white supremacist law enforcement infiltration business. It's, of course, I'm not saying the majority. I'm just saying that there's a faction out there, right? So it becomes tough. It's a tough question, and it's like I said, it's not that I'm an anti-police person. They have a hard job, and I'm very grateful to them, as I am to the military personnel who conduct themselves in the military, the social workers, a lot of the government folks. Now, there is probably government bloat out there, and the government bloat people probably know who you are. And if you are that, yeah, you're the part of the bloat and the shit that gives the government a bad name. But I'm convinced that there are ways that we can make the government efficient by using tricks of the capitalist trade, and ways of improving processes, etc., to meet goals, etc. Now, politics, corruption, all that can step in. It's happening now either way. We can figure something out. I think part of the problem is we have a cultural rot that is happening, but that's also on top of many things. All right, let's see what Superfan Kate says. So much corruption, yes. Very bad training needs to become a job for people who otherwise couldn't get power, for some. Defunding police is a dumb idea, though. You get what you pay for. You're asking people to put their lives on the line for $35K. No, thank you, indeed. You want college-educated good people, pay them for it, indeed. Superfan Kate, not all police departments are this way. I realize it, but it is too big a portion. Superfan Chris agrees, and he says there needs to be better training for police officers. And also goes on to say, but when it boils down to police officers are public servants, i.e. servants of public figures and the entities, not the private citizen. That is where the disconnect is. Indeed, Chris has stumbled upon another aspect of policing that borders into the realm of conspiracy theory. To those who maybe aren't as familiar, I guess, with the notion that the police have no what do you call it? There's no constitutional guarantee, etc., per the Supreme Court, that the police act in your individual interests. They are acting in the interest of property, and not necessarily individual individual people. So Superfan Chris goes on to say police have zero obligation under the Constitution to protect private citizens. Exactly. That is the thing. So I don't even believe there's municipal pledges or anything even at a sub-constitutional level within a municipality that really pledges law enforcement to protect you per se as a private citizen. They're charged with keeping order in society, basically. So that sort of begs the question: is there someone that should be? And when we talk about defunding the police too, there are some folks that are talking about shutting it down, like I talked about the anarchists and whatnot, but and super libertarians. But what was I going to say? Part of what the defunding the police, from what I understand, part of that movement seems to be that the police, if you look at a city budget, the police budget has become an ever-increasing component of the city budget. And it could be because of corruption. It could be because of a number of things. Regardless, it's being justified and occurring, and it could be, and it's oftentimes at the detriment of other, other departments. So there could be something like defunding social workers, but increasing, headcount in the police department. So now you have people that can't process the folks that need the social workers because there's not enough social workers, and now they're on the streets being dealt with by police. Or instead of hiring some doctors to fund, to work in the mental institution, you close the institution and hire 30 more police, and we just jail the mentally ill. So these are the shenanigans that are going on. It's not the police themselves individually that are at fault. There are bigger cogs in the wheel moving around, again, layers in the onion, I guess you could say. But the existence of them being confirmed by this government entity of these white supremacist police brings up the question: how do you detect them? How do you know who's who? And how, shouldn't it matter? And why doesn't it matter? Why doesn't it seem to matter more in the general discourse? Or why aren't people talking about it? And can you support the police while also critiquing the police and holding them accountable and saying, what are you doing about this? You know what I mean? Because I support the police in general. I see them, I've always had a positive interaction in general. I've had generally positive interactions with police. But as an institution, there's even if their net effect is good, the presence of the bad is unacceptable. There really can't be bad. This is an example of where you can't have that, because there's just too much of a power asymmetry that even a little hint of that type of inkling of that predisposition becomes a problem. And then if we couple that with an idea that this has been officially been known about since '06 and maybe nobody's done anything about it, how many folks and how many promotions happened in the amount of time to where we're talking now and still really nothing has been done? So how many people in the police force, and how would you know? Like, how do we, and just because someone's Hispanic or Asian or non-white, basically could be black, doesn't mean that they haven't sort of succumbed to white supremacist rhetoric. It's out there. There were Jewish folks that succumbed to anti-Jewish rhetoric that were basically turncoats and helped the Nazis out, right? So those kinds of things are out there. You know what I mean? Anyway, but we also have to couple that with this idea that there are some fascistic tendencies that are coming out of our government, and with a police force with increasing amounts of firepower. Is that necessarily the right move to have, and will that create an arms race between citizens and the police at some point? And is that what we want to see happen? Like having, Vietnam on our own shores, because we've basically we fought people trying to defend their homeland. There's going to be a point where the police are seen as an invading force and people are defending their homeland. If it goes crazy, if things go crazy and we truly see the rise of the neo-fascist movement and a large chunk of the police are being, or National Guard and those types of forces are being used as a appendage of that neo-fascist movement, All right, Superfan K says, many zeros percent support the police, but will never question. Oh wait, what? Never not question them. Yes, indeed. I have met too many jerks. Yes. Okay. Yeah. There's jerks everywhere, but yeah, there are a lot of jerks in the police force. Unfortunately, some folks do not really study. There really needs to be some kind of spiritual, or maybe they need to just study the Tao. If they would study the Tao, then they would just relax and they wouldn't have so many problems. All right. Superfan Chris says, it's very telling that many former military police officers refuse to become civilian officers due to the corrupt culture. Military police officers are trained to be humanitarians first, right? Yes, indeed, they have their code of conduct, but they also have rules of engagement, all of those things, which you would expect the police force to have, and maybe they have it, maybe it's just not working in the way that they're supposed to. I don't know. I don't really know that much. I just know that there's some issues going on. What is happening, right? Superfan Kate says, And I personally had one really bad experience. Really, see, so she, despite the really bad experience, we can't paint the whole thing, which I 100% agree with that, right? And we can't just say, oh, we don't support the police at all. They are human beings. The government is made of humans. There's a narrative out there that the government is one thing and the people are another thing, and like thin blue line, and the police are like a separate entity, and the military are like a separate entity. It's like, no, military, police, they're arms of the government. They're part of the government. They're not like some special thing that exists outside of that, right? And not that anyone in our conversation is treating it that way. I'm just saying that I believe there's a narrative that exists like that. Sorry, guys. All right, let's see where we are. Superfan Chris says, I've witnessed a madman ram the gates on base. The MPs chased him down and never drew their guns. Their first mission was to protect the base from danger and see if the madman was alive after. He crashed the car. They're never to pull their weapon unless the target pulls or shoots at them. The level of training and discipline is amazing. And Superfan Kate said that we need more of that, but instead they hire these power-hungry country bumpkins, basically. No doubt, there are reports that exist that there are people who were turned down from police forces because they scored too high on intelligence tests, because they are troublemakers, those people that score too high, so they didn't hire them. I mean, there's a bigger problem, right? It's all part of the big onion. What is the big onion? The big onion is the deterioration of the culture, of the spirit of humanity, of what does that even mean to be human, is to be human to be the individual, and, you know, F you, pay me, I don't care about my fellow person, I only care for myself. You know, is that the American way? Is that the human way? What is the natural way? Or do we work together? You know, he's my brother, he ain't heavy, blah blah, right? I believe that man cannot kill a woman. No one person can kill the lion alone. And even the people, the crazy people that say, oh, I could kill a lion with my bare hands, just give me some obsidian and I'll make a da-da-da. How'd you know to use obsidian? Did you pop out of the womb knowing how to use obsidian? Or did you learn and stand on the shoulders of the caveman before that first cracked the obsidian against the other stone to create the sharp edge? Right? You couldn't kill the lion alone. You had to use some ancient's brain that figured that out, and then we figured it out. So, anyway, that's what I'm saying. All right. This becomes, like, I think part of this discussion highlights part of the problem that we're seeing in our society. Not only do we have a cultural issue that's happening where people are so corrupt that they will basically sell their whole department and whatnot, the integrity for something, right? To avoid blackmail, or to avoid payment of something, to who knows what it is. Just the corruption is rampant. It's not just this country, obviously, but there is no, I feel like there's less and less of this intrinsic feeling for a dedication for either country or your fellow human, or whatever. What do you want to do? You want to be nationalist? You know, your fellow American? I don't, whatever. Just like, what does it even mean to be human? I think that question, that fundamental question has been paraded around and twisted around for many, many years, especially after I'm not blaming Darwin, but after the notion that Darwin brought up that things aren't necessarily like an ecclesiastical nature. Things aren't necessarily born of some supreme being instantaneously. That things could evolve over time. That there is a succession of events that lead to this end. And then people started applying it erroneously to society. Like, okay, we have the society. If you can't make it in society, then you die on the streets, or if you're too poor to live, or something like that. Well, then that's just you being culled off this earth, and you should just sort of, understand your place. And I think that's a grand miscalculation and misrepresentation and a grand misunderstanding of what Darwin was talking about. Really, at the end of the day, in natural selection, when we talk about is who's getting selected to have the most babies and whose babies are most likely to survive. That's really what it is. It's not about are you the fittest for the environment. It's who gets to do it the most and have the most babies. That's it. Can you win the fight against the other dudes to get the whole harem and get to hump all of them and make them all have your kid, or not, right? You know what I mean? The other ones don't get to have kids. They don't have any at all, right? So their genetics don't keep going. It's like, it doesn't mean they're fit for the environment. It just means they're good at boxing each other. They could end up going extinct tomorrow, right? Oh, that is it. So things that still are around must be good, right? No, it just means that at that time that this being could or could not, depending on the outcome of the situation, could not adapt fast enough to some change or pressure in the environment. That's really all it is. And we deviate ourselves from nature all the time. Sure, you could say in nature there is a natural way of things, being killed in order to sustain something else. But we've also divorced ourselves from nature in a lot of ways. We live in air-conditioned buildings. If you have cancer, if there was a cure, you'd probably buy it and use it. So don't lie, right? So, like, these are things that we break ourselves from nature all the time, right? So if it's a natural way to be one way or another, we could look at it and say, is that beneficial to humanity? Yes or no, right? So even if people misinterpret or interpret whatever is right, I don't know, how people are, the nature of humans, at the end of the day, it's, I don't know. At the end of the day, we're humans, and the nature of us is hard to determine. And we can sometimes only look at the net effects, and at that same time, we can't forget that the rest of it still exists. But what do you guys think? I don't know. It's a big topic, and it gets emotional. We get to the point where a lot of times we can't talk about these things. And I want to express thanks to Superfan Kate, especially about talking about your family, your father being in the police force and things like that. So you have a very intimate tie to that profession, right? And that's a really cool insight that you've given. And so we need to be able to have these conversations so that we can look at our culture and say, what is the nature of humanity? Who are we? Are we cooperative? Do we cooperate with each other? Or do we shit on each other and let each other die? We can break, even if you believe that it's natural for us to shit on each other and watch each other die, we can break from that nature. That's the thing, is at the end of the day, I don't know, and maybe it's sort of a moot point. At the end of the day, should we let people die because they don't have food? Should we let people die because they don't have shelter? What should we do with them? Should we put them in jail? Right? I know those are bigger questions than which cop is the white supremacist. But hey, look, FBI told us that there's a white supremacist in the police force. How do you know? What are they doing? Can we figure it out? What kind of answers would you have of how would you mitigate this issue? So think about it. Maybe you got the answers, maybe you don't. Put it in the comments. We can also talk about whatever you want next time. So don't forget to, you know, just put in a comment or whatever if you want to, what is it? Have a suggestion for whatever topic you want. All right, so I'm losing it. I'm about to fall asleep. I am fatigued. I want to welcome you to like and subscribe. Please do, and get the notifications. Please share. We need to build the audience and get folks involved so we can share some insights and know that, yeah, we're talking about police. Doesn't mean we hate them all, but it means that we need to hold them accountable. Just like we should hold the military accountable. Just like we should hold the schools accountable. We should hold all the government accountable, and we should not let them succumb to corporate influence, right? So it's a double-edged sword. The government is being poisoned by capital, while capitalists tell everybody how bad the government is, right? And so it's a weird dance that's happening. And then when there's no government other than the government made to protect the capitalists, like patent law will still exist, and patent law enforcement will still exist, and those kinds of things, and those special property rights and royalties will still exist, right? All of that stuff will, of course, still, that kind of government will still exist, right? They never have a problem with that kind of government, right? Anyway, so let me see here. Oh, Superfan Kate says, I also, to some extent, in the media, the media just loves to watch the shit show. Yes, the media doesn't love you. The media, it just wants to make money. They just want to build an audience. How much audience do they even need? I mean, they just need enough to sell ads. I mean, I don't know. They just need the ratings to be a certain place, and they can exist, and they fight for a little bit more, and they scramble for a little bit more, but they don't give a shit. And the more crazy the title, or the more clicks, or the more whatever the fuck, they don't care. That's what they want. They don't, it's not about the truth. The more sensational, the better. In fact, if the truth hurts them, they're not going to put it in the paper. So something about the reality might not be in the paper because it would hurt them, right? Something happens, it's on the news, we generalize way too much. Yes, we don't dig into the nitty gritty, we don't look at things critically, and I'm hoping that these conversations will help open that dialogue and break through the nonsense, because a lot of times it's propaganda from all directions, but you gotta think most of the propaganda and effective propaganda and the volume of propaganda is coming from those who can pay for it. So who's paying for it? Who can pay for it, right? So most of the propaganda you see is capitalist propaganda. Even if you don't think it's capitalist propaganda, I could probably break it down into capitalist elements, unless it's a straight up anti-capitalist propaganda. Because there's also anti-capitalist propaganda floating around, plenty of it. It is just a sign of our times. And hey, if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that, or whatever you want to talk about. So just let me know. Like, subscribe, Seprock on the beats. So until next time, we got, this is track 18, switching it up. Till next time, I will see y'all later and all that stuff. And hopefully the fatigue won't be so crazy. And I'll be able to transition when I get this live studio person. That'd be cool. One of these days.